You are listening to Hardhouse History with Paul Glazby.
My old friend, Rich Wakley. Filthy Rich.
Paul,
Rich
good
T.
to see you.
How you doing, mate?
I'm good, thanks, mate. How are you?
I'm good. Really good, yeah. It's been a long day, but I've been looking forward to chatting to you. So here we are.
Here we are.
Yeah.
I bet you've got a bit better weather than we have, although it has been reasonably nice yesterday and over Easter, but it's gone back to being pretty grey now.
Well, thankfully last week it started to cool down here, but then this week it's gone 32 again. So
nice.
Yeah.
Got a bit more colour than I have.
Yeah, a little bit.
Still rocking the old studio tan.
Like Nosferatu.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. So let's go back to Rich T.
So I was just mentioning that obviously most people know me, my first name as Filthy Rich, which was kind of when I first started out playing regularly, if you like. But before that, I did have another name, which I mean, it was only for, you know, when music was a hobby for me, which was Rich T, like the biscuit. And my first CD was actually a Hardhouse CD that I gave out, which was in the shape of a biscuit. I tried to find one for you actually, but I couldn't find it. But there'll be a few people that remember that. But obviously, I'm a little bit conscious that I'm not, 100% a member of the, the full Hardhouse industry and music side of things. But that was kind of where I started out, really. I used to go out to nights in Birmingham, like God's Kitchen, Baker's in the city centre. I used to go to Studi Baker's quite a lot on Broad Street, and then I was going out tonight. I was sort of getting the coach up to nights like Gatecrasher, and it wasn't long before the love of trance turned into the love of Hardhouse. So there's a whole kind of origin story from the Hardhouse side of things as well, which kind of reconnects when we start talking about Spectre as well.
Yes, excellent. So Rich T, obviously there was no Rich T Volume 2, just the one CD.
I mean, I think I only produced one CD that was given out to club nights, but that was actually Hardhouse. I mean, earlier on than that, I used to give out trance tapes. That was where I really started out. I gave out tapes of myself playing trance when I first got to Leeds as a university student. I used to give out my tapes to the student promoters, and I started my first real residency, if you like, was at a club called Heaven and Hell in Leeds, which a lot of people will remember. And I used to play down in Hell. I used to play the whole night on a student night. I think it was a Tuesday. Started out on a Tuesday. It was called Vodka, I think. And Jim, the promoter, he booked me after hearing my my trance tape, and I remember years later he said to me, "I've still got that tape in my car. I absolutely love it."
Wow.
But yeah, so I started out Heaven and Hell, and I was sort of playing all night as a student in my first year. And then that night was doing so well that they eventually got me to play at the other nights during the week, the other student nights that they ran during the week. And then the club wanted me to start playing at the weekend as well. So I was doing, sort of Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So 5 nights a week at Heaven and Hell in my first year of university. Obviously back then it was vinyl as well. So I was playing all sorts. I was started out just playing trance really, but then I was sort of progressing the night from sort of house or a bit of early house into the trancey stuff, and then even going a bit harder later on, especially on the weekends. So very early on, I guess I was sort of covering lots of different genres. I wasn't really focused on the one. But trance and Hardhouse were kind of the biggest genres at that time.
So what year was this then? Because you're younger than me, aren't you?
So yeah, I'm 44 now. So
So I'm guessing
So
this was about 99, 2000?
Yeah, so I came to university in 2000.
Right.
So I came to Leeds in 2000. Yeah, and I was at uni for 3 years. So that would be my first real residency, really, and where I sort of cut my teeth in Leeds. And
Where are you from originally?
I was born in Bristol, but I grew up in a place called Solihull.
Ah, right.
So like West Midlands, outskirts of Birmingham. Yeah, my dad was moving due to work, so
Right. Okay. Because I'm terrible with accents. Like when people, unless someone's got like a Scouse accent, I can pick that. But like because I knew you from Leeds, I just assume you're from Leeds. But now
no,
you
I
don't
just
sound anything like anyone from Leeds, but I don't pick up on it.
yeah, no, I don't think I've got an accent, to be honest. A lot of my school friends have got a Brummie accent, and
Right.
I think I don't know if it was consciously or not, but I managed to avoid it. Maybe when I first got to university, I might have had a bit of a Brummie twang, maybe, but yeah, I just from being in Leeds, I never really picked up an accent, and I wasn't in Bristol for long enough to pick up the West Country
Right.
accent
Yeah,
either.
yeah.
So yeah, I guess I'm a bit of a mongrel, really.
Yeah. So can you remember, like you were saying, you played some Hardhouse in those early 2000s? Like, can you
Yeah,
remember
so
any of the tracks that you would have played?
oh yeah, of course. I mean, I used to be resident at a place called Sunday Mass, if you remember that.
Oh yeah.
So I used to play for Dinger at Sunday Mass.
Was that in Dar? Was it in Derby or was it
No, it
in
was in
Leeds?
Sheffield. I think
Oh,
it
in
might have
Sheffield.
started
Right.
out. It might have started out up in Middlesbrough, but then they brought it down to Sheffield, and
Ah, that's
it
right.
was
It was the guy
competing. It was
with
competing with
Insomniacs.
Insomniacs because it was at the same time.
Yeah, that's the guy that Tom thought was, he was going to shoot Tom or something. It was him, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah, probably. I don't know if it would have been him, but people that he was connected with, maybe.
Right.
But going back a little bit further than that, I did play one Hardhouse set in the back room of Evolution for Sunday Central. So that was how I sort of got connected. We used to religiously go to Sunday Central in Leeds, and I played one Hardhouse set in the back room there. I think it might have been on my birthday or something like that. With a good friend of mine, Lenny, as well. Lenny played as well, sort of his only Hardhouse set at the time. But then after that, it kind of grew into playing in the sort of the Rosie's bar, if you like, that was connected to Evolution, which was Funk Essential at the time. Obviously, that was the house and funky house, that we were listening to at the time. So I actually started playing more regularly in there than I did in the in the Hardhouse.
Right.
So yeah, but I did play a lot of I guess a lot of the big Hardhouse tracks back then. I mean, my all-time favorite is Chris C. Freefall. That's
Yeah.
the one I used to rinse loads. But yeah, I mean, I could list a few of my favorites. I mean, one of yours that I always love is the remix of Incisions.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, absolutely love that. But I mean, some of my favorites. I used to like. I used to sort of knock around. We were sort of in the same crew as like Mark Gray, Illogic.
Jez and
So
Charlie.
yeah, Jez and Charlie as well. So they were all kind of in the same circle of friends in Leeds. And, we were regulars at Sunday Central. So, we used to make sure that we would catch all of their sets. Rob Sarah as well. We got to know all of the DJs because it was such a sort of close sort of family of clubbers back then, and people that used to go out. And we had this sort of huge group of friends. We used to go to Space on a Wednesday, every single Wednesday, as a student as well. I was playing out as a student. There were lots of like Hardhouse nights at the time, things like Stonker Supremo as well, that were like, midweek nights that started to book, Sunday Central residents, midweek. So there was just a huge amount of nights to go out to back then as a student. And obviously,
yeah, I mean, that Space on a Wednesday was fucking. I was talking to Rob DeSera about it a couple of weeks ago. Because I was saying that's the first time I ever met Tolly.
Yeah.
And Tolly head kicked someone on the middle of the dance
It was
floor.
Damo. It was Damo that he head kicked. I don't know if you remember Damo, as in, I'm trying to think of his DJ partner now, but yeah, Damo. I mean, most people in Hardhouse circles would know the name.
Because I thought it was someone
Damo.
completely. I'm not going to say who I thought it
but
was. But I thought it was someone different. And the way that Rob was, unless he did it twice,
he might have done it twice.
Yeah.
I'm not sure though.
It was fucking mental. I'm DJing. He comes up and he's like, is he your mate? I'm like, no, I don't know. And he went, oh, okay. And then just walked off. And the next thing I just saw him talking. And then whoosh, his fucking leg came off this kid's down.
I remember being there. Crazy.
Anyway, but yeah,
it was like
on Wednesday night.
One single motion. He just like got into his flight position and just went.
It was nuts.
Yeah.
But that night, like as people, I guess, even like for us back in the early 2000s, you know, anyone that went clubbing or to raves in the early 90s, you know, would have been like, oh, you don't know what it was like. But we now say that, you know, like, I just can't imagine nights. I mean, maybe they are. I don't know. But like for a Wednesday night, that used to be fucking mental, didn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think in the 90s in particular, and obviously we're talking, you know, early 2000s, but the vibe in the 90s back then, you know, with sort of no phones and, you know, no one to sort of keep track, you know, it was just a very hedonistic time. And we sort of had a bit of the best of both worlds, really, because we grew up in the 90s, you know, or, you know, our teens and late teens were 90s, but then, you know, we went into the 2000s, which was our sort of heyday, if you like. And that was when the technology was coming in, but I guess we were the guinea pigs, really, weren't we, for all the technology as well. But yeah, I just feel like back then, you know, no one was worried about what they were doing. No one was worried about, you know, being monitored or, you know, things getting caught on camera or what they would say to each other. It was just a very sort of free time to kind of do what you want, really, and you just had this sort of freedom. And, you know, being away from home for the first time as a student, you know, all the students would come together, music would connect us all, drugs obviously would fuel the fire as well, and, you know, we'd all just have the best time of our lives, and it just seemed to, you can't really say it, you know, it's better than it is now. You can just say that it was a different time. And, you know, we had different worries, or less worries, maybe even. Obviously, youngsters that go out today, I mean, some of them aren't even drinking now, are they? They're like staying sober to go out and stuff like that, which was almost unheard of back in our day.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I can still remember coming out of Insomniacs on a Sunday morning. There was this kid, so off his face on, it must have been like ketamine or GHB or maybe both.
Right.
And he was like half hanging out of it. He'd pulled his car out the car space. He's like trying to drive. And we had to, I think I took his keys off him and we had to get him out of the car. It was nuts. Like he would have killed somebody, probably not himself. He would have killed someone else.
Well, yeah, Insomniac's car park was just a whole entity in itself, I think, wasn't it? I mean, the party just went on and on. You know, like people, I guess, because people were so wasted, they couldn't leave. Really, they just had to stay there and make their own party.
Well, I mean, when you think, you know, people would have gone to Gatecrasher and then left there at 4, Insomniacs till midday, leave Insomniacs, go to the Howard until 2 or 3, and then Zulu would have started on a Sunday afternoon.
Zulu, yeah, that's right.
That went through until 8, 9 o'clock at night.
And was Zulu run by Tom as well?
No, that was Andy Usher.
Okay.
Yeah.
But did Tom do the Howard? Was Tom involved with the Howard?
No, I don't think.
No.
I don't think
so. That was just, crazy times.
Yeah.
Crazy
so
times.
when you're DJing in Rosie's bar, is that as filthy rich by then?
Yeah. So around that time, I was, I think in the early days when I was sort of DJing around Leeds regularly, I got to a certain level, and I just knew that the next step in order for me to sort of progress music-wise, because that's what a lot of people were doing around me. All the DJs that I knew around me were making their own music, and that was something that I really wanted to do as well. So I started to obviously, you know, getting in with somebody as an engineer to help me make the music. Obviously, you know, Ingo, that was the first engineer that I worked with for the Filthy Rich music. Yeah. So I was making, you know, electro house was the music at the time. And when I finally got to the stage where I felt like I was ready to start making music, that was what I was sort of known for in the early days. So that was the sound that I was making initially as Filthy Rich was the electro house.
And when you were with
obviously-
Ingo, were you going to his place in his mum's place in Lincoln?
Yeah, I used to drive to Lincoln. Yeah, every week pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then, you know, that evolved slowly but surely into the tech house stuff. The Filthy Rich side of things evolved from the electro house into tech house, you know, and I was having releases on sort of, you know, I was doing Tool Room, I was doing Leeds the New School. I think possibly around that time, maybe a bit before, I got Mixed Bag Future Hero, you know, that kind of era. And yeah, that evolved from the electro house into the tech house. But then at the same time, I was doing I was sort of spending my summers in Ibiza, and I was going out to nights like Cocoon and DC-10, and my taste was kind of split quite, like sort of divided a lot, because I was going out to nights and I wanted to, you know, be in the clubs listening to the more sort of underground music and, you know, techno and, you know, deep house and, you know, the DC-10 kind of style of music. But at the same time, I was still making, you know, sort of electro house and starting to tinker with tech house as well. So that was when I decided that I wanted to make something in a bit of a different style. I wanted to kind of experiment and, you know, just sort of get in with somebody else that I wasn't already working with. And that's when Jess and Charlie introduced me to Paul Maddox. So that was when the Spectre project was born.
Right.
But I'm just going to have to pause, mate, for 1 second, because I need to just grab my charger to make sure that my laptop doesn't die.
No worries.
But it should be plugged in. Yes, we're good. Sorry.
Okay. So you start working with Maddox. And where did the name Spectre come from?
We both came up with it, actually. There were a few other names, but once we'd said the word Spectre, we kind of both just gravitated naturally towards that one.
What were the other names?
Well,
could you have been called?
Do you know what? There's only one that springs to mind that I can remember. There must have been others, but they can't have been very good, because I would have remembered them, or they would have, or I can't remember the really terrible ones. But
Rich T and the Hobnobs.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, that one wasn't on the table. So the only one I can remember, which I think we ended up deciding was a bit too drum and bass, was Optic.
Right.
With a K, obviously.
Of course, yeah. Well, what else?
But I think we decided it was a little bit drum and bass. I can remember some other. So when we were discussing a record label, obviously, I can remember some other names that we had as potential for record labels.
What was the label?
So the label's called Respect. And
that's it, because it's like an anagram of Spectre.
It's an anagram of Spectre. Don't know if everyone realizes that, but it's, you know, just the RE taken off the end and put to the start.
Yeah.
So yeah, the other names for the record label that I can remember, one was Silhouette, and another one I think was like Ecto or Echo. It was something, a play on those two words or something. Yeah.
Okay. So, not terrible.
Not terrible. Not like Rich T.
Well, I was saying to
Vince's label.
Yeah, I was. I think it might have been when the Tidy Boys came on. I was talking to them, and before Vicious Circle was called Vicious Circle, like one of the ideas was World Records.
Oh, really? Wow,
that would have been fucking terrible. But yeah, I can't.
I mean, Vicious Circle is such a great name. I was thinking about it the other day. You know, it's such a great name for a label. Even with the artwork and everything, it's just perfect fit, isn't it? So
and it all came about because. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, you often think, you know, what if I'd have called it something else? It would have just completely changed my whole career.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, but yeah, it all came about because you remember Rachel that I was married to.
Yes.
So her niece, who at the time, and God, this woman will be about 35 years old now, but at the time she was like 7, and Rachel used to tell this joke all the time, and every time they used to see her, they go, "Auntie Rachel, tell us the joke," and it was, "What's this?" is a vicious circle. And she was telling the joke, and I'm like, vicious circle, records around, like it makes sense,
Yeah, yeah.
So that's how it came about. And world records never happened, thank fuck.
I'm sure you would have had a rethink at some point.
I'm sure. Yeah. Okay, so then you start working with Maddox. So this is what, 2004?
So 2005 was when we started working together, or was that the first release on Respect? I can't remember, but it must have been around that sort of time. 2005 was when we first started working together.
And can you remember the first track? Because I've been talking to Maddox just half an hour ago, because I said to him, mate, can you work out what the very first track is that we ever did together? Because he, like his filing system's incredible.
Yeah.
So, but for some reason, he can't work out which was the first. But he knows, and even I know, which was some of the early ones, but we can't work out the very first track we did together.
Yeah.
Can you remember the first Spectre?
So I'd have to double check, but I think one of the first three was called Minimal Machinist, because it was, I mean, once we'd done sort of one or two tracks, we kind of decided that, the route that we were going down was sort of the minimal techno route, if you like. But with melody as well, we sort of, we didn't want to exclude anything. We wanted to have vocals. We wanted to, be experimental with vocals, be experimental with melodies, be experimental with the new minimal sounds that we were listening to. So I remember our first EP got signed to Dance Electric, which was Oliver Hunterman's label, and it would have had 3 tracks on the EP, so I'll have to double check. And Minimal Machinist was one of them, or that might have been the second release. I'm trying to think now. If I don't want to say it was 100% the first release, but there was a few around then. There was Haze, there was A Glimpse Outside, there was Minimal Machinist, there was Shadow Unfolds. They were all our sort of early releases that we sort of got known for. And quite a few of them were on Oliver Hunterman's label, Dance Electric. Because I was connected with a guy in Germany called Jan Langer that used to run all of their labels for them. He was sort of a label head for sort of Hunterman and Bodzin and all those guys. So there was like Picadol, there was Dance Electric, there was just a whole bunch of labels. Later on, Hertz Blood, and lots of labels that we signed our early Spectre stuff to. So
right,
yeah.
And then how long did you go before you then set up Respect?
I think I think we set up Respect quite early, because we realized after releasing a few releases, I think it might have been to do with management. Actually, we started to talk to some management people called Bigfoot, and they were running Adam Bayer's Drum Code. They were running Fergie and his label, and Alan Fitzpatrick's 8-Sided Dice. I forget what Fergie's label was called. It was it'll come to me. But anyway, there was a group of labels that were sort of techno artists, and Bigfoot were managing them. And their main sort of angle, if you like, was to go in, was for the artists to start their own label and release their own music on their own label, and sort of grow that family of artists, beneath them, sort of thing, to bring, to hopefully get people to start supporting your music and sort of create your own family.
Yeah.
And obviously having an outlet for your own music as well gives you a bit more control, allows you to kind of, not be restricted, if you like, when, because in those days, well, in any time really, but it's always been tough for an artist when you're sending demos out to all these other labels, and you're relying on them, which basically means you're at their mercy, really, in terms of how long it takes for music to come out, how long it takes for it to get signed, even to get listened to. It's a very difficult game to play, to sort of label hop and pick and choose the labels, unless the music's so amazing that you can just pick and choose wherever you like. But I think it helps as an artist to have that outlet for your own music. Just gives you more control.
Definitely helped me. I mean, my label only came about because I sent the first tracks that I did to everybody, and everybody turned them down.
Really?
So then and it was Kick It, which is, you know, like,
Massive.
yeah.
Yeah.
But that was the first release. But then things like Incisions that you were saying earlier. Well, the Chocky mix of Incisions was always and still is one of my favorite Hardhouse records. I heard it. It was either Phil Reynolds or Spencer Freeland, I can never remember, but someone brought a tape back from London and that track was on. It was, and it might not have even been them, but it just on the tape, it just said Spencer Freeland live or Phil Reynolds live, whichever. And that track was on it, but I never managed to get a copy. Like I just couldn't find it. So that's why we'd licensed Incisions so that I could then get the Chocky mix on vinyl.
Yeah.
But then obviously we ended up doing a remix of it, and then that remix ended up being massive as well.
Yeah.
But like you said, having your own label, it just allows you to do basically whatever you want.
Yeah.
To a degree.
Definitely. Yeah. It gave us that freedom, you know, in the early days. And like I was saying before, when you release, we started out just releasing our own music. And so for the sort of first, I mean, easily the first 5, possibly even the first 10 releases, it was just Spectre music. And that was us kind of, you know, setting the vibe for the label, you know, allowing us to control the releases and just getting our music out there. But then, you know, once your music sort of starts, you know, getting known and getting played and you know, we're getting feedback from artists that we're sending it to, that's when, you know, people then start sending you demos and, you know, they want their music to come out on your label. And that allows you to kind of build your own family of artists, you know, where you're releasing their music. And, you know, when you DJ as well, you're playing out their music, you get to test the music before you can release it. You know, it just kind of creates a sort of a better business model, if you like, where, you know, you can sort of incorporate all of the different angles and it helps all of the artists and your label and the brand and, you know, your music all grow together at once.
I think the other thing as well is that, like, this is what I always found, like, because people have said to me all the time, I mean, and once you get busy as well, you're flying into a gig, you literally getting there just in time to play. But even if I didn't have another gig, I'd get there 5 minutes before and I'd just walk in. I'd only hear the last track of the person that was playing before me, and then I'd just go on, you know, that.
Yeah.
And people would say, "Well, what if all the tracks you're playing have been played earlier?" But, you know, if everyone's done the job right, no one's played any Glazby tracks, no one's played any Vicious Circle stuff, and when you've got your own label, so you can turn up to a night and you know you can play whatever you want in your catalogue, and it should be the first time everyone's hearing it that night, if everyone
Yeah.
else has followed the, you know, the rules.
Yeah, the rules. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've all been there when the rules haven't been followed. But yeah, no, exactly that. I mean, another thing for us as well, you know, for in terms of Spectre performances, early days we were DJing back to back, but quite early on, you know, we started doing a hybrid live show. So, you know, we'd have myself doing the DJing and Paul would be sort of on a MIDI controller and with a laptop.
Oh, exercising his Vince Clarke
Yeah,
muscle.
just obviously, I think at that point, maybe obviously, you know, he was a Hardhouse DJ and artist and producer in his own right back then. But I think it might have been around the time when he'd done a Hardhouse live show. And that was like a new thing for him where, you know, he'd sort of worked out how to do it. And, you know, done all the sort of the troubleshooting and the trial and error. And that allowed him to kind of then sort of take the choice bits from it, or the bits that he really enjoyed doing when he was actually playing out. Because solo live is a difficult thing to do. Obviously, when there's 2 of you, it's a little bit easier. So, and you know, in those early days, it was just a hybrid live show. But Paul had the laptop, the MIDI controller. You know, he's firing, you know, live loops over our tracks. You know, we'd break down all the tracks into vocals, into synths, into effects, and things like that. So it just gave that sort of spontaneous live element that, you know, no matter where we turned up and played, even if, God forbid, people had been playing Spectre tracks before us, we would sound different, you know, every time. So yeah, we just had that live element to our sets, which in the early days was really good.
I've got to say, I think definitely 3 times people have, because obviously people know that I know Maddox. So when you know, if I've been traveling around and people have asked me about Maddox, obviously they don't know that we know each other, but they know that, you know, me and Maddox do. And people have said that Spectre is their all-time favorite artist.
Oh, wow.
That's pretty full on, isn't it?
That is pretty crazy. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure what to say about that. I mean, that's great news. I mean, Spectre at the moment is pretty quiet, to be honest. I don't know if Paul talked about it, but you know, sort of post COVID happened for the worst time for Spectre, to be honest. We just released our 3rd album, so you know, we had a whole live show planned. We had gigs in the diary for the whole summer. You know, it was sort of a culmination of, you know, years and years of work, and we were just about to have one of our best years. And that, you know, COVID hit, and you know, we were completely, you know, the rug was pulled from underneath us. And you know, don't get me wrong, lots of artists in the same position, but it couldn't have happened at a worse time for Spectre. And since sort of post COVID, you know, we sort of had about maybe between 6 months and 18 months period of, we were sort of busy again. You know, people were honoring the bookings of, you know, what the bookings they'd booked, you know, prior to COVID. And, you know, we were thinking that we were kind of getting back into sort of a full busy diary. But then there was just this huge void afterwards, where, you know, we just didn't have any bookings in the diary, and we just had a lot of interest lost. And I think it was just a natural thing, because the hard techno side of things had just taken off so big during COVID and post COVID. You know, all of our the territories where we were most busy, like Germany, Switzerland, Austria, Netherlands, all of those territories where we used to play sort of 2-3 times a month. You know, obviously the hard techno just completely took over. So, you know, the market just kind of evolved. And yeah, we sort of decided at that time that we didn't really want to fully go into like the full on hard techno stuff, because partly because, you know, Paul had already done his sort of 155 BPM, 150 BPM kind of music, you know, prior to that. But we just felt that, you know, the Spectre stuff didn't really fit going all the way to the real hard BPMs. You know, we did evolve. We sort of, you know, we sped up the music a little bit and did what we did a bit faster and a bit tougher. But yeah, it just kind of, the hard techno's just completely took over at the moment. So
yeah,
we're quite quiet right now.
Well, I mean, everything comes around, mate. I mean, look at me. I'm fucking
Yeah,
playing again
that's
after
true.
yeah. It's
Same with the Filthy Rich stuff, I guess, because obviously I've just played Kiss the Funk for Rob. So
well, that's what actually I was going to say that. Like, you're back playing Kiss the Funk. I'm doing closing sets at Insomniacs. It's like we've stepped back 20 years.
Yeah. It is 20 years as well. That's it was the 21st reunion for Kiss the Funk. So
yeah,
that was obviously a huge brand in Leeds as well, that I was resident for.
So that brings, because Rob came on a couple of weeks ago to talk about, you know, the build up to Kiss the Funk, and now you're here, and it's just happened this weekend, hasn't it?
Yeah, just gone. Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Sunday it was. Yeah, it was great. It was an amazing vibe, actually. Just you know, when you sort of hear all of that old music that that you are familiar with, but you know, you sort of hear the odd gem here and there when you're in the club, and you're like, oh, I forgot about this. But then there's lots of old faces surrounding you as well, and everyone's like excited to hear the music again. And it was just a really incredible vibe. I really enjoyed playing. You know, my set went great. There was lots of people there even early on for the sets. You know, it sort of started in the daytime from sort of 3 p.m. And it was just a great vibe. You know, it just kind of had that sort of old vibe to it, which was great. You know, just having all those old faces out, and you know, all those people that remember that time, and that you know, those have those memories to that music was great.
Yeah, I mean, it must be just like I mean, obviously it's the same era. Like, in the people I see when I'm doing gigs now, like these young kids. Like, I mean, I was a young kid as well, but you know, like, and now they're 45, 50 years old, and some of them are there with their 20-year-old son, and you know, like, it's just, it's crazy.
It is crazy, yeah, to think that it was sort of 20 years ago. I mean, yeah, crazy times. I don't even know what to say about it.
You just get all depressed and start crying.
Well, it sort of makes you feel old, but also it makes you feel privileged and lucky, you know, that you experienced it all those years ago, and you know that you were part of the scene, and you know that you know, I mean, I had the opportunity to play out in all these clubs, and you know, party and meet all these great, amazing people, and be connected by music. So you know, you do feel lucky to have experienced all those times, and to still be passionate enough to be, you know, to be still in it, and still experiencing good times like that. So
yeah, I had a bit of a weird sort of not realization, I can't even think what the word is, but
epiphany.
when yeah, like I was heading back to Insomniacs, and I think I was on the fly, and I'm just thinking, Tom's flying me. That obviously, when I lived in England, I used to fly to Australia to do gigs, so it's the same
Yeah,
thing.
of
But it's
course.
like
Yeah, yeah.
now I'm flying back to England to play for an hour or 90 minutes or whatever,
Yeah.
and I'm just mixing records together, you know? You know,
Like I used to, but a little bit easier.
yeah, like he could get someone else to do, you know, like, he was just, I don't know, it was just like a weird sort of feeling, and then it does make you feel, 'cause I've said this loads of times on previous podcasts, but, like, when you're younger and you're doing it and you don't appreciate what, you know, like, you're just in the thick of it, and
Yeah.
you're like a young guy or girl maybe, and you kinda take it for granted. But then, like, the feeling now, I've been nearly 50, I'm 48 now, and people, whatever impact I made back in, you know, early 2000s, that people now will still come out
Yeah.
to see me just mix records together. Like, it's,
Yeah.
and same for you, obviously. Like, it's just, it's nuts.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, like I say, you do feel lucky. I think when you're younger, you kind of, you don't really think too much about, you don't zoom out, do you? You don't
No.
really zoom out. You're just in it, and you've got this sort of tunnel vision, and you're just, you know, you're very focused on, you're having fun, but also you're so sort of passionate about the music, and things are moving so fast. I feel like you don't really sort of stop to, you never take a minute's rest to kind of just stop and appreciate things. You know, I can remember thinking to myself back then, oh, you know, I really appreciate what I'm experiencing, but you never really sort of take stock and really sort of realize and, you know, understand too much. I think the older and wiser you get, you sort of understand a bit more what you've been through, and
Mm.
you know, the ups and downs.
And also as well, like, I guess for you and for me, I mean, I sort of, you know, stepped away from it. So then having that time where you're not involved, I mean, like, well, because you've always done it, haven't you? Like, there's not been a time where you've, other than COVID, I guess.
I mean, now is probably the time when I've been doing it less, if I'm being honest. I mean, post COVID, the thing about my solo career, so sort of going back just a little bit, after filthy with the Filthy Rich stuff, I reached a sort of a level where I was trying, I was on certain labels, but I was trying to be on some other labels that I really wanted to get on, that were a little bit more underground possibly than what I was doing. So, you know, the sort of the Hot Natured, you know, the Reliefs, the Crosstown Rebels, the sort of, you know, the cooler labels at the time, I was sort of wanting to be more in that sort of field, and trying to release my music on some cooler labels basically. And I realized that it was partly although people at the time say, oh, you know, it's not to do with the name, it's to do with the music. That was when I sort of took a step back and, you know, had a little bit of a break and sort of had a rethink. Obviously, at the time, Spectre just carried on, and that was, you know, a focus of mine as well. So, but the Filthy Rich stuff, I sort of took a back seat, stopped doing it, and I think it must have been possibly when Spectre had a little bit of a dip, around the sort of 2010s, maybe something like that, or maybe slightly later than that. That was when I sort of decided to sort of relaunch and rebrand my solo stuff, and that was when I started the Rich Wakley project, and I did a sort of good sort of 5 years, maybe 6 year stint of the Rich Wakley stuff, You know, where I was really, you know, I was sort of releasing on labels like Avotra, Sante's label, Roosh was Hector Couto's label, on Solar, Solado's label. So, you know, the Rich Wakley stuff, I sort of refocused, was making sort of a bit more underground sort of tech house, still kind of like, you know, using my inspirations, if you like.
And who are you doing that with?
So that was me producing my music on my own. Obviously, I would still I would still use an engineer for getting my stuff mastered and occasionally mixed as well. But I was making the tracks. I think that was another thing as well with the Filthy Rich stuff. I kind of felt like I'd sort of been, because back then there was a little bit more stigma with working with engineers, and you know, even to the point where like some agencies would sort of be worried about taking you on if you didn't make your own music, things like that. And I'm not saying, you know, I was ghost produced, but it was more sort of there was a bit more stigma back then, even just sort of being in the room with somebody and, you know, getting help to make music. So I think the sort of the relaunch and the rebrand of my own stuff, that was the purpose for me, was to sort of make sure that I was making the tracks on my own, you know, and even if they needed mixed and mastered, and then that's fine. But that was sort of the sort of the idea behind it, was to kind of move away from that stigma of, you know, working with engineers. But that's the problem, is like people don't really fully understand. Maybe they understand a little bit more now, but you know, even if you make your own music and you get, you know, you're really good, it all depends on the room that you're in. And you know, unless you've got a completely perfectly you know, acoustics in your room, then you're never gonna be able to get it mastered as well as if you give it to, you know, someone with that professional ear.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously now times are slightly changing. Like there's sort of AI programs that can do things for you now, so it's a little bit different. But yeah.
Right. So when you've been in the studio, like with Ingo and obviously Maddox, you're picking stuff up as you know, like kind of learning from them as you go.
Yeah, I mean, Ingo worked. In fact, Ingo and Maddox in the early days worked on Cubase, and I think I had my own PC and I tried Cubase, but for me it was almost the amount of time that I had to put into the producing side, because I was constantly traveling, DJing, and you know, obviously searching for music as well, probably record shopping back then as well. You know, I found that I didn't really have enough time to fully put into learning the ropes. You know, I'd pick up bits in the studio, you know, sometimes ask for projects, you know, to take them home. But it was when I started to make my own edits and things on Ableton that was the sort of the change for me in my head. It was like, Ableton's just so easy to use, so intuitive, so sort of quick and easy. You know, getting things in time and stuff like that for making edits and you know, things for my DJ sets. That for me was when I was like, Ableton's the way forward, really. And I think around the same time, you know, Paul switched to Ableton as well. So it was when we moved to Ableton that was when I started to pick up more stuff, if you like, in the studio, and just found it a lot easier to learn. But I never really took time out to sort of retrain, or, you know, lots of people now are doing courses and things like that. And yeah, for me, because I was always so busy being in the studio and traveling as well, it was difficult.
That's the thing. So I've spent, God, I don't even know. It's probably thousands of hours with Maddox, Mick Cree, Paul Janes, Ingo.
Yeah.
Trying to think who else. And I don't even know how to turn the fucking machine on. I don't know
really
anything.
Really,
not a thing. Like I was never interested in what they were doing. I was just like, and I'd just sing something, or you know, I want the sound to be like that,
Yeah.
or do you remember that track that we did before, like that, but a little bit dirty, whatever. You know, I'd explain what I wanted, and I think for the most part, the tracks I did with other, you know, like if I did a track with someone else, it still sounded like something, and like a like I put my stamp on it. I was never that
Of
whole
course,
ghost, thing. Like, it was never that.
Yeah, no.
But yeah, it's just I just never had any interest in what they were doing. I was never really into computers anyway. Even like growing up, some people just were like really into learning computers, and it's just not a thing for me. So then I
Yeah,
just carried on.
you can have a bit more of a technical brain, I think. I mean, Maddox was always the one that had that sort of technical mind. When it came to
Yeah.
things like that. He loves to. The challenge for him is to learn. How to do the things that he
Yeah.
wants to do. If you know what I mean, and
Yeah.
that's his enjoyment. But like yourself, for me, I think my strengths. I was always a DJ first. My real sort of passion comes from DJing, 100%. The making music thing came later, and not came out of necessity, but came out of a realization that in order for me to kind of be where I wanted to be, DJ wise and playing in the places where I wanted to be, I needed to be releasing my own music. But that's another thing I'd say about this, how things are now, is that, a lot of the talents and the value of an actual DJ is kind of lost now. And that's partly how I feel about the industry at the moment, is that, a lot of my value has kind of decreased a little bit, with the way that social media is, and the huge focus on, constantly being on social media and how it looks, and less and less about the music. I just find, that sort of selector DJ that's, mixing or, even playing vinyl or whatever, can mix vinyl, that sort of talent and value has kind of been lost a little bit. I mean,
Yeah.
possibly not for certain DJs, because they reached a certain point, and once you get past a certain point, sometimes you're kind of safe a little bit, and you're you sort of never lose it, sort of thing. You never lose that demand.
If you call Cox, you're pretty much untouchable.
That's what I mean. The sort of the A-list, they're always going to be there or thereabouts. But yeah, I think post-COVID, definitely the industry's changed a lot, and I find that a lot of the value of my talents has kind of been taken away a little bit. But
yeah. I mean, Maddox has got an interesting sort of take on that whole thing of, everybody has the time, and
changing the guard.
Yeah, like it was just such a, I can't remember exactly what he was saying, but he's like, you can either be the grumpy old man, which you get all pissed off that, or you just go, well, I had a good run, and and just keep doing, or find some other avenue or whatever. It was just like I just thought it was an interesting. I guess I was kind of lucky in that I just walked away from it, and now I've just come back, and and I came back not even realizing that the Hardhouse thing was like a thing again. It was only through doing this podcast that I kind of found out, and then bit by bit, I was, I mean, Matt, he used to. It's not even that funny anymore, but it was funny for a while. Like every week, I'd be like a bit more into it,
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "Remember, you're a real estate agent. You got to sell houses. Fuck this shit. I'm a fucking DJ again."
Brilliant. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at a little bit, actually. After COVID, I had to get a job, basically. But one of the tough things for me is that I can't really talk too much about my job because I work for civil service, so it's kind of like, a lot of times I've thought about coming online and talking about it, and kind of relating the two, if you like, or I mean, you wouldn't have any sort of bother talking about what you do, but for me, I'm a little bit like, I probably shouldn't talk about that too much. So I sort of never really explained it to anyone, like there's probably not many people know that I'm working full time. So that's been a bit of a struggle for me as well, because after COVID, obviously I had to make ends meet, I had to, pay the mortgage, pay the bills. So, I had to get a full-time job. And then the struggle has been since then is balancing the time to kind of then put time and energy back into the music as well. And that took time away from what me and Maddox were doing. You know, by that time, you know, I'd stopped doing the Rich Wakley stuff. I'd put all of my time and effort into Spectre. You know, Spectre was both of our main focus. You know, we just really been, you know, I mean, it took 18 months to make the album, never mind release it and plan the live show afterwards. Like, it was huge amounts of time that we put into, you know, our third album, and then, you know, the live show after that. So when everything did just kind of slow down and stop, I think it was a very tough time for both of us, really, because I was still working full time and trying to kind of like piece it together, you know, in the you know, in the time off that I had, you know, which was weekends, and, you know, I'd occasionally take days off for studio work and stuff like that. But I felt like we both we definitely lost a bit of our enthusiasm for it, you know, because of what happened and how it happened, and just how much we were affected. And I think now the struggle for me is kind of sort of almost trying to rediscover my passion and my ambition, and my, you know, my thirst, you know, for music again, because I've had to completely switch my focus. And I'm sure there's loads of artists out there that are like that, you know, where they've you know, taken a hit in bookings, you know, they're not playing out as much as they used to, probably not making money like they used to, and they've had to completely change their focus and work. So that for me has been the hardest thing, because I think with Paul, it was quite easy for him to just make the switch and just be doing what he was doing anyway, which is making music all day, every day, and having clients. And, you know, he makes money from that. But for me, I was like, well, what do I do? You know, it's like suddenly we haven't got any Spectre income, no interest, no, you know, we had a little bit from coming in from the label, you know, but never huge amounts. It was just sort of paying for itself, really, with a tiny bit of profit here and there. So that's been a tough battle for me recently, you know, definitely in the last 2 years, has been balancing working full time, then trying to work out what's the best foot forward in terms of the music. You know, obviously I'm taking a bit of time off here and there, and me and Paul are still making music, but then, you know, the label, we've taken a bit of a back seat with the label. You know, we've still got everything there if we need it, sort of thing. But right now, for me, it's taken a while for me to kind of sort of process everything that happened. Almost grieve a little bit, because I've, you know, talking to counselors and things like that, they're saying, you know, what you've not done is actually processed what you've been through and what you've lost, and, you know, things like that. Sometimes you have to grieve things that you've lost, and you don't really understand that, and you don't really know how to do it, because no one's ever taught how to grieve.
Well, that's right. And the thing is as well, like, I mean, when I had the gyms, like, anything that you create, like, I'm not saying it's like your children, because
No, but you have a connection to it, don't you?
and it's like, my partner at the time, she just couldn't understand. She's like, "Oh, just fuck it off and do something else." And I'm like, "But I'd literally put everything into that, you know, financially, emotionally, work, you know, like, and you don't want to say that, like, the gyms are still going now. Like, I sold it, and then the guy that bought it off me, he kept it going, and, you know, it changed, whatever. But the ethos, the brand was still there, and he's since sold it, but it's still, you know, it's still going. And obviously, vicious circle, the fact that Ben carried it on, you know, for all that time, and it's still going. So it's nice when you create these things that carry on. But yeah, when you lose something like that, like, you know, there is that loss, and you know, but if you said to someone, you know, like, if someone's, God forbid, you know, they actually lose a child, I mean, that's got to be the worst thing for anybody. You know, there's
Of course,
a certain
family member
hierarchy, like, grandparents need to die,
Sure.
then parents, then the kid, you know, like, that's the order it should be. So you can't say that it's like that, but it is that similar sort of thing in that, you know, you created, like, I was just saying last night, I did a track with, because obviously, you know, the last 20 years, everything I've done musically has been with Maddox.
Yeah.
Pretty much everything.
Yeah.
But then through doing the podcast, I've met, well, not met him, I knew him, but I didn't really know him that well, but Frank Farrell. And I started doing stuff with him as well. And we've been doing some, some really good stuff. But I did I did a new track last night with, I don't even know if you know, Agent Jack and Drax Nelson. He's got
I
loads
heard
of
the
different,
names.
Nogga. Do you know Maddox's mate, Nogga?
No, not
Oh,
heard that
anyway.
one.
Anyway, that's his name's Paul Norris, and
Okay.
I knew him as, he actually used to come to Prime Move at the gym. Like
Okay, yeah.
he was a member there for a while, but he's got all these artist names. Anyway, we did a track last night, and I was saying to him that in the couple of days in the lead up to the session, to the studio session, it's like that excitement because you're going to create something,
Mm.
and then like it happens, and then the next day you're listening to the track, and maybe it needs a version 2, or like you're sort of picking bits out that might need changing, but then it's the excitement of what you've created, like, and then
Yeah.
sometimes the track like Kick It, for example, or the Incisions remix, 25 years later, it's still being played. The one we made last night, is that going to be played in 25 years? I don't know. But when you've got these things that sort of go through time, so then if that gets taken away, especially for something as fucking retarded as COVID,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just,
I think it just zapped all of my, my love for the industry and the music. It took me a long time to recover, and like I said, I had to go through this kind of recovery process, if you like, but not I didn't get any help with that. Like I wasn't speaking to anyone. It's like even not seeing Paul like every day, sort of 3 or 4 times a week. Even that. Just suddenly being thrown into a full-time job that I've never, even coping with that kind of thing in terms of headspace is really, really challenging. So I think for this last sort of couple of years for me, I've sort of been trying to work out my best foot forward in the music industry, like I said, and trying to sort of reignite my passion, if you like. I mean, one thing that's helped is I've been playing twice a month for my friend's bar in Leeds. So, in terms of keeping my foot in the music, that's allowed me to do that. I still get my sort of DJ fix twice a month down at the bar. I've sort of been playing a lot of the old funky house and piano house music that, first got me into the house side of things. Lots of classics and stuff like that. So I think that sort of keeping my foot in, but with sort of minimal pressure of like where to go next, and are you going to make any music, that kind of thing, because working a full-time job, it just didn't leave me any headspace or any time to even think about creating. And obviously I'd take a couple of days off a month to still be able to create with Paul, and do some Spectre stuff. But I think I've had like a 2-year period now where it's just been a recovery process, really, probably even without realizing that that's what I'm doing. I've just been sort of, trying to process and trying to sort of understand and trying to sort of remember, certain things and realize. But I think for me as well, what I realized is there's nothing else that I want to do. So like the job that I'm doing is out of necessity. It's really tedious and really boring, and it doesn't interest me. It's not particularly challenging. I mean, it has had challenging moments, but it's not particularly fulfilling in terms of my passions and my creative side and things like that. And so for me, I was like, well, what else is there for me to do? Where else do I fit? There must be a better job out there for me, kind of thing. Or can I fit somehow back into the music industry? But for me, I think I found or realized after 18 months or so that there's not really anything else that I'm as passionate about than music. Music's been my life, and I fell into that. It wasn't even planned. It wasn't like I went to music college and planned my whole music career. I fell into it through a love of music, from being on the dance floor, from losing myself to with my mates and to the music, and then started wanting to buy the music that I heard in the clubs, and finding out you can't get it on CD, you have to buy it on vinyl, and that's how I started buying vinyl. So I just became a obsessed sort of crate digger, if you like. But
so did you ever, until recently, had you ever had a job, or did you just do music all the time?
I've done music full time since I came to university. I had early jobs. You know, I worked in a butcher. I worked at Toby Carvery.
Yeah.
That, you know, sort of early school jobs. And then first job out of university, I worked for a clinical research unit called Covance because my degree's in physiology.
Right.
I wanted to be a forensic scientist, like my dad. But yeah, I worked in medical research. Basically, it was you know, one of these places that does phase 1 drug trials on healthy volunteers. So when they know that the medication works, and they test the medication on healthy volunteers to work out the side effects, and you know.
So they set the healthy volunteers and fuck them up.
Basically, yeah. So yeah, I was working. It was kind of like what was called a bank contract at the time. It's sort of like it was full-time hours, but it was like you bank up your hours. It's not classed as a full-time contract.
Right.
Anyway, I was doing that for about 18, maybe 12 months, 18 months after university, and then I had to quit because I was so busy with the DJing.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously I'd not done. You know, I'd stopped and done the gyms and what have you. But then I got into real estate when the gyms, you know, took a turn because my manager had a nervous breakdown and everything, you know, went. In fact, you used to come in my gym, didn't you?
Yeah, I was going to say,
not even touched on that, have we? Yeah, you and
no.
Max used to come and.
I was going to say the funny thing for me is that I used to come to Insomniacs regularly and watch you DJ, and you know, we probably might have said hello because we knew certain people, and you know, we're in certain situations, but we never knew each other, you know, until years later, when we were introduced through Paul.
Yeah.
And I used to come to you, to come to the gym with Paul when I was down with him because I'd stay over, and obviously that's when I first met you.
Yeah.
And then you were personal training me for a while.
Yeah.
At your house, yeah. And then obviously you set up the gyms, and that was when we used to come regularly to the gyms. Yeah.
Yeah. I forgot about that. Yeah. I had there's this woman. She's like a when you were saying before about, you know, you're doing it through necessities. Like real estate for me is not a, you know, I did it because I had to do. Like,
yeah,
I was 40 years old, and I'm like, I can't go and work for somebody. Like, I'm unemployable. I've like, you know, there's going to be this 25-year gap in my resume. And this woman, for the last couple of years, she's like a headhunter for one of the big real estate brands here. And I just had to say to her a couple of weeks ago, I went, I'm not the person, you know, like, stop chasing me, because if I came and worked at your place, I would be a big disappointment. Like, I'm not that bothered about being a real estate agent, because she's like the idea is that she sort of gets you and helps you, you know, develop into a, you know, if you're doing 30 sales a year, then they'll take you to doing 50 sales a year kind of thing. And I'm like, I don't care enough. I'm happy doing what I do. You know, like, I look after my clients. I'm fine. I don't need to, you know, come and work in your office. I appreciate the, you know, the the thought, but I'm not that passionate about, you know, like, and this is what's been nice getting back into the music, because it is something that you are actually really passionate about. I think the problem is that, you know, especially me being in Australia, but even if I lived in England, it's not like I could live off being a DJ like I did back in, you know, the early 2000s, because there's just not enough of a scene anymore.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So
Yeah, I
might have
agree.
to have a little cry after this episode, Richard.
It's not that bad, is it? I should have like written down only my funny anecdotes and nothing else. No, I think, yeah. I mean, I haven't had a chance to talk about this to many people. To kind of, excuse me.
Well, mate, there's about 1,000 who are going to listen to this. Check the comments out.
I'm a little bit ill, which is why I'm sniffling a little bit. But yeah, I think for me, as you just said, then the problem is that I'm not passionate about what I'm doing, and I'm having to put so much time into that you know, it just becomes something that you're an autopilot for. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's when you start to think, okay, so what actually are my real passions? And you know, you start to remember, you know, why you did music in the first place.
Yeah. Well, mate, I think you know, maybe speaking to someone to help you through that process, get your head clear, and then you'll have the rebirth, phoenix rising from the ashes.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, I think you have to be realistic as well, don't you? I mean, like you said, can I ever live off just music ever again? That sort of thing. You start to think those sort of things, and I mean, for me, having the job has just meant security, basically.
Yeah.
That's been the only sort of amazing thing about it, is that I've been financially secure. I've managed to purchase my own house and, get on the ladder, that kind of thing, which I would never have done, just from having the self-employment and, DJ wages. And, although, we were, successful touring, playing, 4 or 5 times a month, when there's 2 of you, that's something even more difficult. It's like, you could have, well, I mean, it's basically you're getting 40% of what you earn, 20% to management, and then, you split in the rest. So, in order for me and Paul to have a really healthy month, we'd need to be pushing 10 grand, really.
Mm.
But I'm not saying that you can't live off less. You can, for sure. But, in order to kind of get to to a point where you would expect a really healthy solo artist to be in terms of financially.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, I think to myself, could I ever get to that level again where I'm sort of just earning enough money from DJing? And I think it would be difficult. I think I as much as, I'd like to, I'm starting to make music again, and I'm happy. Probably one of my happiest points when I am actually DJing, that is my happy place. Like, so I do live for those moments, but you kind of do have to be a bit realistic and think to yourself, I'm not sure I could ever live off it again. But never say never. You can always have a big track and blow up.
I was going to say, you just see that big hit.
That one that's eluded me for 40 years.
Well, mate, that's been a very open and honest conversation. I think
hopefully it wasn't too depressing, like you said.
Well, no, I think a lot of people will be able to relate to what you just said. I mean, E&M, when he was on, he was saying that, some people have done some stupid things because they didn't get to the level that they felt that they should. I don't know who these people were, but he was just saying that, there's some, when he came on last time, there'd been a few in the recent weeks, some people that weren't around anymore because they couldn't deal with the fact that they'd, not been able to make it. And he's like, it's just DJing. Like, it's not that, there's other things in life.
Yeah.
And I think if you can still keep your hand in, that gives you that happy place,
Yeah.
every now and again, that maybe that's all we can ask for. I only get to play 3 times a year.
Yeah. I think just one thing that artists don't really understand when they get into the music industry is the highs and the lows. And, obviously everybody always says it, but you don't really understand just how high and how low you go and how regular that can be. Even just the complete change when you go traveling and you're in a hotel and you get looked after and you get flown here and you go and play in an amazing gig. You might have a huge festival stage of 10,000 people or 5,000 people, and then literally 2 hours later you're in a hotel room on your own. You've got to come down from that high, and you might be traveling for the next 24 hours, and you're going home possibly to an empty house, and you then might have that full week, not seeing anyone, for example. I mean, if you're maybe not if you're in a relationship or whatever, but the highs and lows of a touring artist is it takes its toll on your mental health. So I think you've just got to have that support network around you, and hopefully you've got close friends and family and everything to help you through those times. But I think that's one thing that people don't really realize about what we do or what we have done always. And even people don't realize that haven't done it yet and want that life. They don't realize just how up and down it can be.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I always used to have the people that would come up to me.
The
and go,
highs are very high,
"Smile."
though.
Yeah, well, that's right. People would be like, "Smile," and I'd be just like, "I've just fucking driven 6 hours to get here, and I'm playing some ridiculously hard house. Like,
Yeah.
what am I gonna smile about?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, mate.
being tired as well is such a huge
Oh,
factor.
mate, it's fucking awful. Yeah, and then
'Cause,
you know
you
you've
know,
got to
the
drive
yeah.
back, and you're gonna have to stop off at a motorway services to try and get 20 minutes sleep so you don't kill yourself on the way
Yeah.
back, you know?
And they're expecting you to, you know, bring the party and bring the whole vibe, and you know, you're jet lagged. You just traveled 12 hours, and
Exactly.
you're just like, you're running on fumes. Yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's tough, can be tough.
Yeah.
But mate, there we go.
Yeah. Well, hang around. We're gonna do a little bit more for the members, but
Lovely.
Filthy Rich, Rich T, Spectre, thanks for everything.
No, thank you, Paul. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Hang in there, brother. Hang in there.
Big love.
Thanks, mate.
Cheers, mate.
You were listening to Hardhouse History with Paul Glazby.